What seems to be the problem, pal?
There's just so much pain in the world, so many issues. I don't think I can bear it.
Well, friendo, it sounds like you could use a dose of pop culture roulette.
Pop culture roulette? What's that? Some sort of pop culture themed podcast or something?
That's right, sonny boy. When hope seems far, dive into some PCR.
But I already get my entertainment news from Variety.
Huh, that's pretty good. If you're a chucklehead, PCR gives you news you need, condensed, unfiltered, and raw, from three nerds who know a little something about something.
Wow, okay, sign me up.
That's the spirit. Pop Culture Roulette. New episodes every Monday, available on all major podcast directories.
Welcome to Moving Panels One Shot. Let's have a nerdy little conversation. I'm so excited for this one. We are gonna do a bracket. We did the best 80s comic book movie a few months ago, and now we're gonna move on to the 90s. And for this bracket, I have with me two guys that I think were perfect for this choice. First off, from the 80s Flick Flashback. Yeah, say that again.
Please do.
From the 80s Flick Flashback podcast, please welcome Tim Williams. How are you, Tim?
I'm good. I usually do 80s, but let's talk about the 90s. I was alive then too.
Really? That's how time works.
That's how time works.
Oh,
interesting.
Crazy. And then our master of brackets with their moving panels co-host, please welcome from Pop Culture Roulette, Mr. Nicholas Pepin. How are you, Nicholas?
You got a bracket, so of course I'm involved. And as much as I enjoy doing the 80s, I love the 90s. So
yeah, we talk about, and I know we do a lot with Tim. We're a child of the 80s, how much you love the 80s, and how much. But the 90s were like, I don't know about you guys, because you guys are a little older than me. But the 90s were where I truly started to enjoy movies. So the 80s is a nostalgia decade for me. Like, those are the ones that are connected to my childhood. Those are my feel-good movies for the most part. And then the 90s was when I started getting into movies, because that would be middle school, high school for me. How about you guys?
I mean, I could say I probably started to enjoy movies maybe a little bit, but I definitely get where you're coming from. Because 90s was I started high school in 92. I graduated college in 2000, 2001. So, the entire 90s was, high school and college for me. So that was a sweet spot. And I think there's a couple of these movies on the list that Tim and I might have actually went and saw together. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think we did. Yeah. Yeah, same with Nicholas. It's like, I think I talked about it on one of my episodes, like the late 80s, like 87, 88, 89, I was getting into like movies that were, Oscar contenders, and you'd find on best of lists and stuff. But I agree with you, like 90s was like my late high school going into college for me. So there was a different kind of appreciation, a little bit more maturity and understanding how movies were made and, what character arcs and things of that nature. So definitely a different perspective on 90s movies than I do of 80s movies for sure.
Yeah, I think when Nicholas brought it up, it made me think, you know what? Because again, for me, it was like middle school and high school. So 90s was when I was going to see the movies in the theaters. Right. So that, different level. Whereas, I mean, anyone who listens to the 80s Flick Flashback when I'm on it know that pretty much all the 80s movies I saw on television. So these were the movies I'm finally, seeing in the theaters and getting to enjoy the full experience of them. So let's get into it. We came up with a list. I believe I got them all. If you think I missed one, please let me know. But we had 39 movies that we found that were based off of comic books. That include I even went manga on this. Like, I found anything that was connected to a comic strip, comic book, manga, any printed panel pictures, we went with it. However, we didn't want to do that many. And I wanted to make it a nice little bracket. So we said, let's take a few out and make it 32. Because that's a nice evened out bracket. Let's make it 32. So let me quickly mention the ones that we eliminated, and we can talk about why we eliminated them. The first was a really easy elimination, and that was Barbed Wire, because that is the one we decided was the worst comic book movie of all time. So no reason to even put it on a bracket where we're trying to determine the best. We also eliminated the TV movie Death of the Incredible Hulk. And I'm going to say the only reason we eliminated that was because Nicholas and Tim, we couldn't find a way for them to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I own it on DVD, so I would have been able to watch it, but the two of them weren't. So it wouldn't be fair to put it on here since they wouldn't be able to talk about it. Then we also decided to eliminate Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 just because it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3.
And it was also pretty heavily featured in the worst comic book bracket. So
Exactly.
Yeah. Which there are others that we I
crossover.
did decide to keep on the list.
Yeah.
So there will be some, but they'll get eliminated probably round one.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other ones we eliminated were, again, because of just them being so random, as well as being based on things that none of us really knew. And that was Crying Freeman, Fist of the North Star, Guyver, and Guyver Dark Hero. Although I was very surprised to some of the ratings I saw for Guyver Dark Hero. But we decided, you know what, again, anime or manga comics there that we're not really familiar with, and then the movies aren't really well known and are very hard to try to find. So that's the ones we decided to get rid of. So we narrowed it down to 32. Within that 32, we have, I forgot to write down the numbers, so let me count because I didn't mark them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 that are based off of DC properties. We've got 1, 2, and if we count Death of Incredible Hulk, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-ish, 7 that are based off of Marvel properties. And then we have some Dark Horse, which you could kind of maybe put into the DC category, as well as there's a couple others on here that technically are underneath Marvel or DC. And then we've got an Image comic movie, which some people may already know which one that one is, considering it's the only Image comic that has been turned into a major motion picture. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. I got the bracket. Did I share with you guys the seating? I don't remember if I did or
Nope.
not.
No.
But that's
Okay,
all
so-
right. It'll be more fun that way.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I was hoping. So
Surprise me.
So here we go. So right off the bat, we've got our number one seed, and I'm not going to keep up with the seeds, to be honest, but this was just like the 80s one. I based it off of ratings from IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, averaged it all together. If it didn't have one, I actually asked ChatGPT. I don't know if I told you guys this.
Yeah, you did.
I asked ChatGPT to give me a rating between 1 and 10, and although ChatGPT is very persnickety about making decisions,
Mm-hmm.
I was able to finally get a number out of it. And so I used that for anything that was missing. So here we go. Our best versus our worst. Number 1 versus number 32. The Crow versus Steel.
Wait,
Brandon Lee versus Shaquille O'Neal.
The Crow is number 1?
The Crow was
Yeah,
number
that's
1.
a little surprising. To me.
Okay, well, let's not even talk about Steel, because we already talked about
It's a
that
Superman.
one.
Yeah, that was in our worst comic book movie bracket as well.
Let's see, what alphabetical order here? The Crow.
So-
Doesn't hold up. Killer soundtrack. Not enough to save it. 2.5 out of 5.
All right. So I'm guessing you're picking The Crow.
I'm picking The Crow because it's better than the. I don't even know what I wrote down for Steel. If I even bothered to write anything down.
Refuse to even give it the time to write anything down.
just so bad. 1 out of 5.
All right. How about you, Tim?
One features someone who can play basketball, and that's about all it has going for it. So I'm going with The Crow over Steel, which is not a surprise.
And I'm going to stick to my I don't talk back about a Superman property. So with those votes, The Crow moves on. I will say, rewatching The Crow, it was a lot better than I thought it was. So, all right, moving on. Next up in round 2, we got number 17, Time Cop, versus number 16, The Shadow.
Oh, Time Cop all day. Time Cop is much higher on my rankings than The Shadow. But that's also probably one of my favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. It's campy and silly, and it doesn't make a lot of logical sense, but it's a lot of fun.
A lot of these movies don't make a lot of logical sense.
Yeah.
Most of them don't, but yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely going Time Cop over The Shadow.
I can get 2 copies of Time Cop for the price of 1. I don't even want 1 copy of Time Cop. Time Cop was better than I remembered it being. I gave it a 3 out of 5, but I also gave The Shadow a 3 out of 5, so I'm going to have to figure out how to fix that problem. I wanted to like The Shadow more than I did, so I think I'm going to go Time Cop because of that. Like, I really, I mean, they had such a good cast, and it should have been better. It probably, I'm going to say this a bunch, probably in the first round, it's probably primed for a really good remake. Like, there's some really interesting stuff to do with that property. But, you know. But yeah, Time Cop. Yeah.
I don't know. Some of the comic strip movies that became big in the 90s, part of me is almost just like, yeah, let's just let them be. Just let them be. I mean, and we'll talk about several of them throughout. But
Right.
I will say this. The Shadow, I didn't realize how, like, star-powered out The Shadow was.
Yeah.
I didn't remember. I mean, of course, Alec Baldwin in the lead, but the little bit parts. You know, Peter Boyle, Ian McKellen, Tim Curry, Jonathan Winters, all of these just legendary actors playing, you know, these small bit parts. I mean, going to the 80s, even Max Wright, the dad from Alf, was in the movie.
Yeah, Jonathan Winters being in there really blew my mind for a minute. Like, I was just like, how did they get him? Like, for this?
And not very well cast for that role, I don't think. He stood out a little bit to me, but I just watched that one today, so it's still fresh on my mind. But yeah, but I agree with you, Laramy. That watching that now, it's like they really thought this was going to be like a huge blockbuster movie and really tried to make it more than it really was, and it just doesn't hold up. It didn't do well when it first came out, but I remember liking it when I saw it. It doesn't hold up now, but
I will say I like it. I enjoyed watching it. I really did.
Yeah.
I thought this the first time I saw it, and I thought it when I watched it again. I really think that when Alec Baldwin turns into the Shadow, he favors his brother Billy.
He does. Yes, I would agree with that. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's
the nose for sure. Yeah.
So, all right. So, Time Cop moves on that one. Next up, this one's. This is about to be just a mashing. So we got number 9, Dick Tracy, against number 24, the unreleased Fantastic Four.
I mean, do we even have to vote? I mean, it's pretty much going to be a clean sweep of 3-0, right? Fantastic Four. I mean,
yeah.
Fantastic Four. When my friend Craig owned a comic book store, he used to have like a movie night every once a month, and he had gotten a hold of a bootleg copy of that, which
that's the only way to get a hold of it.
Well, yeah, it's the only way to get a hold of it, but you know. And we watched it, and it's fun for its campiness, but it's not good. Dick Tracy is good. It holds up. You guys did.
It's fun for its campiness, but it's good.
Yeah, but after you guys did that episode, it reminded me about how much I love that movie, so I bought it on DVD or Blu-ray, whatever I could find.
It's gonna come up, so I'm just gonna go ahead and mention it. I will say this Fantastic Four, even though it wasn't released, I mean it's the same quality as the Captain America movie that was released.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't officially finished, so it's not as clean as the Captain America movie is, but it's the same quality. All right, so yeah, Dick Tracy takes that one. So moving on, this one's, this is going to be another barn burner here. 25, The Crow, City of Angels, off of our worst comic book movie bracket, so we already know where this is going. Versus number 8, Blade.
Moving on, Blade.
Right, yeah. Blade is way too high on my ranking to overpower the horrible sequel to The Crow. Or, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
the first
City
horrible sequel to The Crow.
Yeah, City of Angels, just... I rewatched The Crow, and I was like, this is a lot better than I thought it was. And I really think they could have had something had the accident not happened with Brandon Lee. But then this follow-up, the new guy was okay, but the movie just did not work.
I refuse to rewatch it, so I'm going off of... I'm going...
Oh no, I didn't rewatch it. I remembered it from
Yeah.
when we did it for worst movie. So, all right, moving on. We got number 5, Batman Returns versus number 28, Virus.
Batman Returns.
Yeah, I mean, Batman Returns probably not going to get super far in this bracket.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good, but Virus,
Yeah.
despite some of the movies we've already mentioned, might be one of the worst movies that you made me watch.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I was about to say there's some other ones on this list.
Yeah, that is
Right.
true. I mean, although, again, like I said, I'm going to say this a lot. I think there is potential with a bigger, better budget and a director that actually knew what he was doing
Hmm.
to make that story interesting.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But
Well,
whatever Donald Sutherland was doing, I don't know.
oh yeah. Did y'all know it was a comic though?
I had no idea.
No, I do remember going to see that with a bunch of my roommates in college. I didn't remember a single thing about it other than the fact that I remember going to see it.
So I purchased the comic because I didn't know it was connected to comedy. I haven't read it yet, but I was just flipping through it, and I was like, okay, this is going to be very loosely based.
Oh, it was very loosely based. Yeah.
But Virus was one of those movies. There was a run of these type of movies in the 90s. You had like Mimic
Yeah.
and The Relic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of the weird isolated alien incident.
Yeah.
that is now they're going to take over.
And they
that was
they
a
really
weird one.
thought it was going to be something when they started making all the action figures. And
I don't remember that.
No,
But yeah,
Look, no, yeah, that's another thing about these 90s one is how much like promotional material there is for some of these.
Yeah.
But it's funny that it's another Baldwin that we're knocking out because we got William in this one.
Yeah, well, he's definitely not the most talented of the Baldwin brothers. But I will say, like, Virus was not one that I remembered, and then when I watched it, I was like, I obviously didn't see it in the theater. I don't think I'd ever seen it before. I think I'd seen like the poster for it or knew it was around, but I put it in that mood. Like, it ranked pretty high on my rankings, not like super high, but better than wherever you had it ranked. But
28th.
28th.
It was on our,
28th, way above that. But only because that's one of those movies, like, it's a good bad movie in the sense of it's fun to watch and make fun of it, like the special effects and the electronic things trying to come to life and just how 90s it was. So that's why I gave it a look.
All right, so we got Batman Returns, obviously, taking out that one. Okay. Next up, this one could be interesting. Number 21, Richie Rich, the movie about the richest kid in the world, starring, at the time, the richest kid in the world.
Yeah.
Versus number 12, Jet Li, Black Mask. So one of the manga ones that I did decide to keep on here. Because I will just say I'm a huge fan of Jet Li, Jackie Chan. So a lot of the stuff they do, I'm all for it. And Black Mask isn't, I mean, it's your typical kung fu sci-fi movie. But what do you think? Does it hold up against Richie Rich?
No.
Harvey comic.
I mean, I am also a fan of Jet Li. I thought I had remembered watching this movie when it came out, but I remembered nothing about it. I don't know. It was the hardest movie on the list that we had for me to find a watchable copy of.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was my 3 days of frustration before I finally found a watchable copy that when I finally watched it, I was like, this is awful. Or the dubbing, the voice dubbing, not like the quality of the dubbing, like, track wise. It was just
but the performances,
the voice performances were so bad. Like they didn't even try to get voices that remotely matched. Like it was just like weird random British Australian like people and it was like, oh, it was so distracting and so awful. Richie Rich was fun. I mean, it's not great, but it's fun. So I'm definitely voting Richie Rich over Black Mask on this one.
Yeah, I think for me, like Richie Rich it's not, once again, it's not in my top 10. It's not even in my top 15, but compared to all the other, like, it's a superhero, it's, you know, the end of the world type. Like, you're watching all those movies over and over again. Like, it was refreshing. It was something different. It was lighthearted and a little bit more, you know, like it's a comic strip, not a comic book kind of a thing. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, the version of Black Mass that I watched, I'm like Nicholas. It was so hard to watch. It's hard to give a true critique on that just based on the quality of the copy that we've had. So for that reason, I put Richie Rich ahead.
Yeah, I can see that where you guys are coming from. I'll make it known, of all the ones we are actually choosing to put into our bracket, I think there's only one I don't own on DVD or Blu-ray. So yeah, I had maybe a little bit more of an advantage than you guys had of being able to watch it. Looking through, no, only one. There was only one that I do not own. But yeah, I do remember Black Mask was one that I think I had found it for y'all, sent you a link, and then you messaged me back and go, yeah, that doesn't work. Or so I will say, when I went to start watching these, when I was gonna go, I had pulled out I was pulling out like 3 or 4 of them at a time to kind of sit out and okay, these are the ones I'll watch this week. Bethany was very excited about Richie Rich, and we sat and watched it as a family. And I think that's what is really going to pull it over for me. I did enjoy Black Mask. I'm not going to lie. I do find it funny. I don't know if it's just because I'm a teacher, but the fact that it looks like he's wearing bulletin board border as a mask.
Right.
That crinkly bulletin board border. So, all right. So Richie Rich will come through there. Oh, this one could be interesting. Next up, we've got number 13, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze, going up against I Am the Law, Judge Dredd. In the typical 90s post-apocalyptic movie.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Judge Dredd is one of those movies where I went to the theater and saw Judge Dredd because I'm a big Stallone fan, and being very disappointed leaving that movie theater. Like, what did I just watch? And teaming him up with Rob Schneider, I don't know whose idea that was in Hollywood. It's like, this would be great.
Sylvester Stallone's idea.
Oh gosh, yeah,
because they're real life friends.
Yeah, I kind of believe that. And then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, I watched both of those with my daughter because she had never seen them before and she used to like the cartoons. She watched the first one and liked it, and then I said, hey, do you want to watch the second with me? She was like, no, I'm good. So I watched it by myself, and because it's not that much worse than the first. Like, the first one is fun. It's not like a big downgrade between the first one, but it's still a downgrade. And only because
I think the suits got better.
The suits did get better.
I will say the suits got better.
Yeah, the April O'Neil did not. But
no.
I think just because I'm a fan of Stallone and Diane Lane, not as much Rob Schneider, just the cast. I don't know. It's tough. It's not by much, but I'm gonna edge out Judge Dredd for me.
Well,
so Judge Dredd is taking it for you.
For me, yeah.
Okay.
I was hoping that my ranking system would help me here, but I gave them both 2 out of 5s.
That's pretty accurate.
Got to make a decision.
For me, the Turtles, I wrote it that it was a massive step back and really got away from what worked in the first.
Yeah. Let's not forget about the Vanilla Ice cameo.
Go Ninja, go Ninja, go.
And I wrote now that the Carl Urban version exists, and I know it's not fair to vote based off of that, but the Carl Urban version is just so much better.
Well, because so my biggest thing as a comic book guy, it's Judge Dredd never removes his helmet. And
in the Stallone version, he almost never wears it.
I actually think he did in one. I think he does in one comic. It was like a big thing, and he's all like scarred up too. I think is what Judge Dredd is. But yeah, he removes it in the first 10 minutes,
and then pretty much never puts it back on.
Yeah, and then has those god awful like blue contact lenses.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't. You know what, to make it...
Am I the only one, too, though, that possibly confuses parts of this movie with Demolition Man?
Yes, I was going to say the same thing. Absolutely.
To make it difficult on you, Laramy, I think even though I didn't like it, I'm going to vote Turtles because I think I disliked Judge Dredd more.
Yeah. Actually, I was gonna go Turtles because I do not like this Judge Dredd movie. I do not like it for the fact that it is so against the comic. Not only taking the helmet off, but the comic is a satire, and this tried to be that 80s or 90s action movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it just missed the boat on so many things. Also, the fact that we're supposed to believe that Sylvester Stallone and Armand Assante
are brothers.
Are brothers. Yeah. And Armand Assante is as physically physically a threat as Stallone is.
Right.
So yeah, and there was just there's so much potential, I think, also in the Judge Dredd movie that just got squashed. Whereas Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you got what you expected. Is where I am with that. Is it better than the first one? No. The costumes are better. No, I'm not a fan of the rip-off Rocksteady and Bebop that we got.
Right.
Although as a wrestling fan, always knowing that that's Kevin Nash as Super Shredder is a fun little tidbit. So yeah, no, I'm going with the Ooze, TMNT 2. So that moves on. All right, next up. Oh, this one's gonna be lopsided. Number 29, Vampirilla versus number 4, Batman: Mask of the Phantasm.
You mean Vampirella wasn't number 2 behind Mask?
No. I'm just gonna go ahead and say if anyone chooses Vampirilla over Mask of the Phantasm, you are no longer allowed.
I mean, okay then.
I'm safe. I'm safe.
I mean, I will admit to, as soon as I watched Vampirella, I did message you and say, listen, when you do the movie, I want to be part of it. Because it's not good. It is far.
Not even
there's
close.
good, and then there's being far away from it. That's what Vampirella. But it is so much fun. Mask of the Phantasm obviously is just an actually good movie.
Yeah, animated masterpiece.
Which for somehow, I will admit this, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again. Never saw until you had me watch it.
Wow, interesting.
Me either.
Yeah.
But I've never watched.
Really?
I haven't watched a lot of the animated superhero movies anyway.
I guess again that may be an age thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just being slightly out of that age range. Great thing. Yeah, so I don't think we need to talk about it anymore. Yeah, Vampirilla is on the list at one day being our end of the season bad movie review. And so Mask of the Phantasm moves on. All right, next up. This one could get interesting. We got number 3, Men in Black versus number 30, Batman and Robin.
Men in Black.
Men in Black.
So no debate whatsoever.
I mean,
we're not gonna.
No.
I mean, Batman and Robin. That's me. Before I state, I mean, just get my Batman straight. That's
Batman. This is the George
This is
Clooney.
Clooney,
This
yeah.
is
yeah. Okay.
Yes.
There's even
Alicia Silverstone.
I mean, the
Arnold Schwarzenegger with all of his ice puns.
The Batman movie that almost ended the comic book movie industry before it was really going versus Men in Black, which is, even if you didn't know it was a comic book movie going in, which I don't think I did at the time.
Yeah, I didn't.
It's actually well, it wasn't originally Marvel, but Marvel bought the rights to it around the same time the movie was released.
Like legitimately like a fun movie. I remember going to see that one in the theaters, but we'll get more. We'll talk about that one more later because it's going on.
Yeah, because it's moving forward. Batman and Robin and the black Batman American Express
I'm
card.
sure you'll get to it eventually, just because you'll have to cover it at some point. But I envy. Well, I don't envy whoever you get to do that, but I feel like because.
Hey, look, that'll be their choice. I do them all, so I let y'all choose which ones you want to do. So actually, Bethany has already. When I was again preparing for this, Bethany was like, "Oh," she goes, "Do you have anybody for Batman?" I said, "I do not." She goes, "I want to do it." I said, "Okay."
More power to her.
So,
normally, I get stuff.
Yeah. So whenever it pops up, Bethany's doing
somehow
Batman
either
Robin.
by my choice or by my choice, I get the bad movie, so I don't want to do that one.
All right, so Men in Black moves on. Next up, we back up a little bit in the franchise, and we go to number 19, Batman Forever, versus number 14, probably a lot higher ranked than you might think, Tank Girl.
Ugh. Ugh. Yeah, I cannot put Tank Girl above Batman Forever.
Lori Petty, Tank Girl.
That movie was so hard to finish watching.
Ice-T as a giant kangaroo, Tank Girl.
How did Batman Forever get ranked lower than Tank Girl? I mean, Batman Forever was, was it as good as the other two, the Michael Keaton Batmans? No. But it was still a pretty good Batman movie.
Right.
Tank Girl wasn't.
The biggest comment I had about Tank Girl when I watched it was like, why didn't they just make it all cartoon? Because the best parts of the movie were the cartoon portions of the movie.
Which were drawn by the guy who did the comic book.
I was like, I would have rather watched a fully animated Tank Girl movie than whatever that was.
It did remind me that there was that very brief period in the mid-90s where they were really trying to make Lori Petty a superstar.
Yeah, I actually said that to Bethany when I was...
I agree.
Because she around this, while I was watching all this stuff, she actually went back and watched A League of Their Own.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it was, Yeah,
there was a couple other things that she was in. But
that and Point Breaker are the only two that I really know that I liked her in.
Yeah, I love Point Break. Tank Girl, I don't think I hated it as much as Tim does, but
I did not like it at all.
I'm not about to even remotely come close to giving it a vote over Batman Forever.
Over Bat Nipples.
Yeah, over Val Kilmer.
Right.
So let me so did y'all rewatch Tank Girl for this?
I did.
I rewatched Tank Girl recently for some reason, and I don't remember if it was to do the work. I don't know. I kept encountering it, and I was like, oh, and I found it on like Hoopla or one of those like library ones, and I was like, I remember kind of enjoying this when it came out, and I watched it going, no, I must not. Different movie I remembered because.
Well, it's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, that's where I saw it.
Yeah. So, did y'all remember that 2-time Academy Award nominee Naomi Watts is in this movie?
Yeah, that was a big, very early in her career. It took me a second to figure it out when she popped up. I was like,
wasn't this one of her first, if not first, movies?
I think it was her first.
I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Also,
she plays Jet Girl.
How they talked Ice-T, who at that time was probably still doing his music career, into throwing on a full bodysuit kangaroo outfit is beyond me.
Mm-hmm.
I would also like to point out that Reggie Cathy, who plays DT, he pops up in another one of these movies later.
He does, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, I was a huge fan of him. Math nerd talking here. He was on Square One on PBS.
Oh, really?
The math, the comedy sketch show that was all math based. He was one of the performers on Square One.
Wasn't Malcolm McDowell the bad guy in that one?
He was.
Yeah. So again, in one of these '90s movies that had a pretty good cast, where you're just like, how did you fail so badly?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then James Hong was in this one, and he was also in The Shadow.
He is in The Shadow, yep.
All right, so we got Batman Forever taking that one. So Tank Girl got tanked. All right, this one's going to be quick. Number 11, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles versus number 22, the TV movie that was supposed to be a pilot, Generation X.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Okay, I'm gonna have to read what I wrote for Generation X. I wrote, it's a bad TV movie that Matt Fuhr couldn't even save. It's very obvious why this never got picked up. 1 of 5.
Yeah, most I have all of the TV pilots that didn't succeed are all clumped together in my ranking because they all just blended together as terrible movies.
I don't think I have anything to say about Generation. I honestly remember watching it on television on Fox. I think when it originally aired, And of course, I was 15, 16, 15. I was probably 14 or 15. Now looking at the date, I was probably 14 or 15 when this aired. So I was at a good age for this to intrigue me. And I remember it intriguing me, but I also remember knowing it was bad then. So, yeah, to completely ruin Jubilee after the successful animated series, and then to have her as this just nothing character. I mean, none of those, the actual kids, the teenagers, but none of them, like, none of them were good.
No.
And then how are you going to have the X-Men with, like, no major X-Men? I mean, you've got White Queen and Banshee being the two main X-Men.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was bad. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was so good.
All right, so TMNT, moving on. All right, next up, we've got The Hoff as Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., another kind of backdoor pilot television movie, versus number 6, The Mask.
Two movies that are very annoying for different reasons.
Oh, come on. The Mask is so good, though.
I love The Mask. I do distinctly remember watching the Nick Fury pilot on TV when I was in college. I'm sure I probably would have watched Generation X if I knew about it. I didn't remember it. But man, he might have looked like the Nick Fury from the comic books, but that movie was bad. It was so obviously a TV movie.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember seeing The Mask in the theater. Of course, it was coming off of his success from Pet Detective, which
Ventura,
I really enjoyed.
Oh, yeah. This was the height of Jim Carrey right here.
But I didn't like it. When I left the theater, it was like it had okay moments, but overall it was just, I just couldn't get into it. And then when it came on video or it was on cable, I watched it one night, like as it was like really late at night and I was like really tired. And it was like twice as funny when I was like really tired. I was like, that's when I have to watch the movies, when I'm about to fall asleep and my sense of humor is different. It holds up a lot better than I think other movies do.
Yeah.
Nick Fury, Agent of...
There's some jokes you couldn't
do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
But the Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., that's one that I started and did not finish because I was so annoyed. Like 45 minutes in, I was like, I just cannot listen to this anymore. It was just so annoying to me.
I would like to point out, the agent that was alongside him for most of it. Do you know that character is the same character Robert Redford is playing in The Winter Soldier?
Oh my goodness!
I knew that. I don't
know that.
Yeah, Alexander Pierce.
That's why that name sounded familiar.
Yep. Alexander Pierce, same character.
Come to think of it, I don't think Alexander Pierce made my who played it best list, but I think everybody would have voted Robert Redford.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so The Mask is taking that one over Nick Fury. Samuel L. Jackson's better anyway. Here we go. Number 7, The Rocketeer versus number 26, the only Image comic on here, Spawn. I'm just going to go ahead and say Spawn was the last one I watched. So it was the freshest. It's the freshest one on my mind. But I will say, as I'm watching it, and it gets towards that third act, I'm just going, I swear computer animation was better than this.
Yeah.
The
effects are very terrible.
There are some of the movies that we watched that came out before Spawn that looked better than Spawn did. I don't remember Spawn looking as bad. I do remember not liking it.
Yeah, but I mean the stuff when he goes into hell, and that stuff. I mean, some of the special effects in the unreleased Fantastic Four movie looked better than this, and this was released by New Line Cinema. Like,
some of the acting in the Nick Fury movie was better than.
Yeah, I had a question because I didn't see Spawn when it came out. I remember people talking about it and kind of raving about it because it was such a different type of comic book movie or whatever. But did that one go straight to video, or was that actually in the theater?
No, it was in theaters. It was in theaters.
It felt very much straight to video type of movie to me.
I think it bombed in the theaters. I don't think it did well because it was obviously not good.
Right.
The soundtrack was amazing. I still listen to the soundtrack, but
I will say John Leguizamo's. I think he, even though he was chewing scenery,
Yeah.
I love John Leguizamo's performance.
Yeah, he was definitely going for it. Him and Martin Sheen. Martin Sheen was like,
I don't even
chewing up scenery too.
I'm not 100% sure Martin Sheen knew what movie he was in, quite honestly.
Right.
I watched that one in college with a girl I know Tim knows her. She was very short. I don't remember.
That limits a few.
I don't remember either of us enjoying it. I'm not going to say it's the reason why that relationship didn't go on very much, but it
didn't help.
It sure didn't help.
Right.
Just looking it up real quick. So it was an estimated budget of $40 million.
Wow.
And the total gross for the United States and Canada was just shy of $55 million.
Okay, so not a
yeah,
total bomb, but
Right.
that's still an unsuccessful
Yeah.
movie.
Definitely.
So, I mean, opening weekend, it made just shy of 20 million. There was clearly like Tim's saying, there was clearly the hype behind it
Mm-hmm.
because Spawn was such a huge comic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it had debuted in 92, 93, I think 92. And just Image Comics exploded because of it. Todd McFarlane was just on a roller coaster with this. Then you had the HBO animated show, which was around the same time. I don't know if they were.
I think they were almost concurrent.
I think they were, yeah. And I mean, as good as Michael J. White is in kind of the lower tier action movies that he's done,
Right.
no offense to him.
Right.
And I know we talk about voice acting all the time, but having Keith David being narrating the animated series, that voice just on top, on par.
Yeah. I was just looking at my ratings. Apparently, I gave it a 2 out of 5, but I feel like I must have done that because I really liked the soundtrack. I gave Rocketeer 4.5 out of 5. So
Rocketeer, I know I've talked about it. You know, Chad and I did the episode on the Rocketeer a while back. It's a nostalgia thing for me, but the Rocketeer is just so much fun.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's in my top 5.
It's not great, but of those movies like The Shadow that we've already talked about and The Phantom that will be further in this list,
Right.
You know, it's the best of those.
Oh, for sure.
1930s, you know, gangster involved type old fashioned comic. Even though the Rocketeer is the one of the three that's not actually from like the 1930s and 40s as a comic.
true.
So, all right. So the Rocketeer moves on, taking out our only Image comic there, Spawn. All right. This one, I already know where Tim's going on this one. But this one, I think all of us are going to choose the same. Number 23, the once again backdoor pilot TV movie Justice League of America, which Bethany and I did an episode of back in the archives. Check that one out. Versus number 10, which Tim and I have done an episode on, Mystery Men.
Yeah, Mystery Men wins this one for me.
Any reason it's not Mystery Men for anybody?
No, because Justice League of America was awful. Mystery Men has one of the highest ratings on my list. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty high on mine as well.
Justice League of America, and again, you can go back and listen to Bethany and I talk about it, but the trying to bring in the sitcom aspect of it and doing the confessionals, which completely undermines the whole superhero keeping a secret identity. It didn't make sense. Why would they be openly talking about it in this documentary style?
Yeah. And I would say just all you really need to know about how bad it is you have a character called Green Lantern.
Yes. And his costume is
not
really green. Yeah, it's like a teal color. And it's not even Hal Jordan. He's Guy Gardner.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mystery Men's got him. Mystery Men, it's good. I think Tim and I said back in the episode when we did it, it doesn't 100% hold up.
Yeah.
As most things from the 90s don't. But I would much rather watch Mystery Men than ever watch Justice League of America. All right, next one is going to be an interesting conversation. So number 15 is one that we almost got rid of. And the only reason I kept it was because of how much I was reading about the cult following that it has. And that's number 15, Hardware versus number 18, Billy Zane as the Phantom. So, just a really quick, in case it does get knocked out here. So, Hardware was a movie that is and is not based on a comic book, which is another reason why I thought about getting rid of it. So, when the movie was released, so if you watch the movie, there's no mention of it being based on any type of comic or anything, because they were trying to get away with something. It was actually the same company that does Judge Dredd. There was some comics that this story, and I forgot, the story's called, I think, Shock in the comic. It's just a few pages, it's a short story and like an anthology. And they sued the filmmakers over this movie, and they won, because it is that short story comic. I looked it up, and it is. But this movie apparently has a huge cult following. It's one of those, like, I guess, classic, like, bad horror movies. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's, to make it quick and easy, post-apocalyptic world, and this scavenger finds the head of a robot, and it turns out the robot is this special type of robot, and the robot puts itself together and starts killing people. And that's what Hardware is in a nutshell. All takes place in this one woman's apartment, the entire movie. And then, of course, we've got the classic comic, The Phantom, the superhero that some people would argue was the first superhero before Superman, but that is up for debate. So did you two guys watch Hardware? Because I think I
did watch Hardware. I hated it. I gave it a 1.5 because, again, potential remake that could actually be good.
Yeah, I could see this one getting remade if you let
Blumhouse do it. I think they could do a really I think they could really especially even keeping it as claustrophobic. But it was so dark and so hard, not hard to follow, but it was not good. Phantom doesn't get a lot of better ratings from me. It's only got a 2.5 out of 5. Also desperate for a remake, but I will watch The Phantom again long before I ever willingly watch Hardware again.
Yeah, I would agree. Hardware I started, I did not finish for many of the same reasons that Nicholas mentioned, just hard to watch. Phantom is one that I remember seeing, not in the theater, but like on video, and not really liking it that much even when I saw it then, and it's not one that I've really wanted to rewatch. I'm not a big Billy Zane fan anyway, but it doesn't edge out by much, but I would watch The Phantom again before watching Hardware.
Yeah, the Phantom's another one. It's fun. I'd like to point out also James Remar, who played Quill. He also is the one blown away by Judge Dredd.
At the beginning of
that movie. All right, so Phantom moves on that one. And then here, our final round or our final matchup of round 1. We got number 31, 1990s Captain America versus number 2, Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero. Yes, number 2.
Wow. I did enjoy the animated Mr. Freeze.
Yes, over Mask of the Phantasm. Yes.
I did put Sub-Zero just above Mask of the Phantasm on my rankings.
Okay. I ain't mad at that. I have a tender spot in my heart for Mr. Freeze, unless Arnold Schwarzenegger's playing.
Right.
So.
I do think that I think I had watched the Captain America movie previously, because when I went back to watch it, I was like, I've seen this, fairly recently. Still very forgettable and not very good.
It is.
Not very good. So I'm definitely going with Sub-Zero as my pick to move on.
I mean, if I'm going to stay true to my rankings, I gave Batman and Mr. Freeze a 2.5 out of 5, and I gave Captain America 2 out of 5. So Batman it is.
Okay. No, I'm going with Sub-Zero as well. So that's a win. Again, I'm a big fan, and I like the story they tell with Mr. Freeze in this one.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah, it was good.
The Captain America movie. I mean, you're right. It is very forgettable.
It was cheesy fun, but it wasn't good enough cheesy fun.
Yeah. And again, you're getting into where Marvel just hadn't really figured things out yet.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to watch it now, knowing what Marvel is, or what Marvel has become, and it's like so much potential that just got...
And the fake rubber ears. I'll never get over the fake rubber ears.
Well, and the Red Skull that was only Red Skull for like 5 seconds, and then the rest of the time he was a weird painted face.
And Italian.
Yes.
Yes.
He's Italian.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you make the Red Skull Italian?
Because it wasn't like you were like, well, we can't say Nazi. I mean, there was a whole...
Oh, yeah. Giant Nazi flags.
Right.
No problem with that. And then Ned Beatty thinking, you know what? I'll follow Superman with
Captain America.
this movie. With Captain America. Oh, and then aren't both of Ralphie's parents in this movie?
Yes,
But-
they are.
yeah.
But not in the same scene.
No,
No.
they're not in the same scene together, but they are both, both of the parents from the Christmas Story. All right, so round 1 is complete. Now we're going back up to the top. Starting off with round 2, we got The Crow versus Time Cop.
I'm voting Time Cop. I'm probably not. I'm probably in the minority there, but the Crow is good. I appreciate it for what it is, but it's not one that I like to watch over and over again. I've seen Time Cop many times, and it's always enjoyable for me.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put this on Nicholas because I'm going to say The Crow. I don't dislike Time Cop, but after rewatching both of them, there was just I really liked The Crow on this most recent watch. Time Cop's just kind of I watched it.
All right, I will stick with how I wrote them when I voted, when I was ranking them. The Crow has a 2.5, mainly because it has a really good soundtrack. Time Cop has a 3.
Okay.
Wow.
So Time Cop wins.
I didn't see it going that way, but
I'm not going to complain. There's the 90s. These movies are all over the place.
yeah, they are. They are.
Even with our seating.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't say that's inaccurate. But yes, but number 1 has been taken down. So Time Cop moves on. This one could get interesting. Dick Tracy versus Blade.
Oh.
I still put Blade over Dick Tracy. I like them both.
So do we go with the one that is probably a better performed movie? Or do we go with the one that is a better conceptualized movie? I don't know. Yeah, actually, I don't even know if I'm right by saying
I don't
that.
know. I'm not sure which one is which now.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
I mean, Dick Tracy. We talked about Dick Tracy recently.
Dick Tracy
It's
better
fun.
conceptualized.
It's fun, but Blade just seems to it landed the plane better than Dick Tracy did. Dick Tracy is fun and there's nostalgia with it, but it's very uneven. And I think Blade knew what it was and knew what it wanted to be and delivered on that. Even being an R-rated horror movie type comic book movie, which was very unheard of, being successful at that time too. So
no one knew it was a comic book movie
Well,
at
true.
the time. Either,
Yeah,
so
true.
I don't think it was until Blade Trinity that it even carried the Marvel name
yeah,
on it.
probably so. Yeah.
I mean, it hurts my heart a little bit to have to vote for Blade over Dick Tracy, but I have to.
No, it's a hard
I have
one.
to go with what I wrote down, and I gave Blade a 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
And I only gave Dick Tracy a 4. I mean, I love Dick Tracy. I had that movie on VHS, and I wore it out, just like the original Batman. I still, in my basement to this day, I have 2 or 3 full sets of the Dick Tracy trading cards. Like, I loved that movie. I've got some of the action figures down there. Like, we could go on and on about Dick Tracy, but I if I have to go, which one is a better movie? Even though it hurts, I'm gonna have to vote Blade.
Yeah. This is the toughest
I'm
one so far.
Yeah, this is the tough one. I'm gonna argue a little bit. I don't think Blade's a better movie. I think though Blade was more of an impactful movie when it comes to comic books, because what Dick Tracy did, Batman had already done.
Very true.
In terms of what its staple is on the comic book movie. Dick Tracy, I think, is a better movie. I'm gonna say that, but I will vote for Blade because of its impact. I mean, there's argument. I will always say Superman's the granddaddy of them all. We've talked about how Batman kept the ball, kept that momentum swoop back in as the 90s got kicked off, because there was really only Superman of, big comic book movies. Then it was Blade that really said, all right, this is now how you do a modern superhero movie. You know, like, because you even said, Nicholas, you know, Batman and Robin almost ruined the franchise, the whole genre. It was Blade that went, no.
Right,
Take a look at it this way.
I mean, Batman and Robin almost killed it, and then a year or two later, like, Blade was like, no, I got this.
Yeah. And then we get X-Men and Spider-Man.
Yeah, because, I mean, when we did the Blade episode, I made the argument that, like, had Blade not been successful, I don't know if we get X-Men or Spider-Man. That everybody tries to say is, like, the start of the modern genre of the comic book movie. Yeah, but, you know...
I do not think Blade gets
the credit that it deserves.
The credit that it deserves, and so I'm going to do it right here. I'm going to agree with both of you, and we're going to go with Blade over Dick Tracy. Very curious as to what Chad says about that when he hears this episode. All right, next up, we got number 5, Batman Returns, against number 21, Richie Rich. So do we like the darkest of the 4 of those Batman movies in that franchise, or the very light comedic recreate a Alfred Hitchcock moment at the end, Richie Rich?
Yeah, this is another kind of somewhat tough one, even though I don't have Richie Rich ranked as high as Batman Returns. Batman Returns is not as good as the original Batman. The pacing is not as good. It drags in some places.
The fact that Batman's barely in it?
Yeah, but it's still enjoyable, and it's still iconic, for sure. I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman is iconic. Danny DeVito as the Penguin, as terrifying as he is. And, you know, even the whole thing about this is a kid's movie when he bites a guy's nose off. And blood splatters everywhere. But yeah, I ranked Batman Returns higher, so I'm going Batman Returns.
Okay.
My wife might be mad at me for not voting for Richie Rich in this situation, but again, I think I have to stay truthful to the way I wrote down on my paper. Batman Returns got a 4, Richie Rich only got a 3.5. So
yeah.
Again, Richie Rich is fun, but Batman Returns, if we're talking superhero movies, I got to go Batman.
Well, because I mean, Richie Rich was also the only one of the entire list that the wife watched with me, because it was also one of the only ones that I had on DVD. You know.
All right, we got TMNT 2, Secret of the Ooze versus Mask of the Phantasm. I'm going Mask of the Phantasm. That one's going to be hard to beat for me. We'll see what it matches up with later. But I'm going Mask of the Phantasm. Again, TMNT 2, it was fun. But Mask of the Phantasm, as I said in round 1, is animation perfection in terms of storytelling. Yeah, TMNT 2 is just a little too corny and cheesy. It's not going to make it past Mask of the Phantasm for me.
I actually have these both ranked right next to each other on my rankings. First time this happened. Way to go.
How?
Yeah, so 20 and 21. And Batman Mask of the Phantasm is at 20 above TMNT 2.
They're really close in ranking on mine as well, score-wise. I'm not going to reveal my score for Mask of the Phantasm just yet, so I don't want to make Laramy mad.
Tim already had it in the 20s.
Yeah, so I'm not going to make him even more mad, but I really felt like Secret of the Ooze was such a step back from the first one, because the first one really flirted with the line of dark and comic, and you know, the second one just was like forget it and just went straight. Like, I mean, the whole opening 5 minutes of everybody in New York eating pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they were like,
can we also talk about that? I don't think I ever thought this. Of course, it's been a while since I'd seen it. I don't know if I'd ever thought this. Is this movie supposed to take place like the very next day?
I think it's like 3 to 6 months later, but it is really close.
Real close together, yeah.
Well, because they have all the foot guys running into the junkyard, going, "This was our fallback place," and I'm going, "Wait, y'all just now getting there?"
We could pick this movie apart for an hour.
Yeah, but that's a review episode.
I mean, Eastman and Laird not wanting to have Bebop and Rocksteady, so they just went ahead and created 2 Bebop and Rocksteady characters instead.
In which one of them was a turtle. That always bothered me.
Anyway, I'm gonna go. I will vote Mask of the Phantasm.
All right, this one we might go through pretty quickly. It depends on what you guys think. Men in Black versus Batman Forever.
Men in Black.
Men in Black.
Yeah, I don't think we need to say any more about Batman Forever, you can go back and listen to that episode I did with Blake way back at the beginning of this podcast. 4th episode or something, way back when. Oh, this one could be interesting. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles against The Mask.
Whew, once again, very close together in my rankings, but The Mask edges it out for me just a little bit.
Oh,
So
I'm surprised at
I
that
have
from
The
you.
Mask ahead.
Okay, well, TMNT got 4.5. The Mask only got 4, so I guess unfortunate. Now, The Mask, I remember going to see that in the theaters, and I remember, I mean, that was Cameron Diaz's first movie, and because I know that she never listens to any podcast I can make, I had such a crush on Cameron Diaz for years after this, because of this movie. Like, I mean, I do enjoy The Mask. I still watch it occasionally. Every couple of years, I'll rewatch it, and it's a lot of fun. Like you said, there's some jokes that don't hold up, but for the most part, it's still fun. And I have such a nostalgia part for it. I can forgive a lot of problems with it. But having rewatched the Turtles movie for the first time in a very long time to do this, I was struck by not only like just how good it was as a movie, and the fact that they made the live action rubber suits work. They really found a way to take the comic book and the cartoon and meld it together and make it work in a
ish.
I thought it was really well done.
Because the movie, you talk about the comic book, and again, we're not going to get into too big of a review. The movie's really a live action version of the cartoon. There are some aspects from the comic, but it's really only the first issue of the comic. But I'm not going to disagree with a lot of that. I personally think that TMNT drags a little in the middle when they get to the farmhouse and all the stuff that's kind of going on there. I get the point of it. I get the story element of it. But when I'm watching it, I mean, you got to think, because I'm even thinking now at 42 years old, thinking about watching it as a 9-10-year-old. That movie didn't hold my interest back then. I enjoyed seeing the turtle stuff, but that part in the middle, and then all of the stuff with, I even forgot the kid's name, but the kid that is April O'Neil's boss's son, and
Sid.
What is the relationship? Yeah, and what is the relationship there? That, like, there's a lot of things about TMNT that as you watch it and think about it, I'm just going, that doesn't make sense as to how that would work that way. So it's coming down to me. I got to go The Mask. It's a shock, I know, and I may end up regretting it later.
We all have to make hard choices.
I kind of am going off of something you said, Nicholas. I think about The Mask, I think more than I think about TMNT.
Listen, had I not burdened myself with writing all these rankings down, I probably would have voted for The Mask. But, as of right now, I'm trying to stick with, the way I wrote my rankings down. Because, like I said, I had not watched the Turtles movie in probably 20 years, if not longer. Where The Mask, I know I've watched probably in the last year. Which is why I didn't rewatch it for when we were, trying to rewatch all the movies. So...
Yeah, that was the other thing, because, and kind of pull back the curtain a little bit, I didn't rewatch all of these movies, because, I mean, some of them, I've seen them enough, seen them either recently or I've seen them enough times that I know them. The Mask, I didn't rewatch. TMNT, I did. And see, that says something to me. The fact that I remember more about The Mask, that I wouldn't need to watch The Mask, than to go back and say, you know what, it's been so long since I've seen TMNT, I probably should rewatch it. So The Mask moves on. I don't know. We'll see if I regret that one later. All right. So next up, we got The Rocketeer versus Mystery Men.
Oof.
I mean, for me, like, as much as I enjoyed The Rocketeer and I gave it really high marks, I'm going Mystery Men. I love that movie.
All right. So, Tim, this is going to be on you because I'm going Rocketeer. Rocketeer, I think I have a little, just a little bit more fun watching The Rocketeer than I do watching Mystery Men. Mystery Men's great. And, you and I did the episode on it. So
This one is tough because, once again, I have them ranked right next to each other They're both in my top 5. I'll say that about my rankings. I've seen Mystery Men so many times. I had not watched The Rocketeer. And I think I watched it again when Disney Plus first came out because it was on there. I was like, "Ooh, I haven't watched it in a long time."
Yeah.
And I have Rocketeer edged out just above Mystery Men. And maybe it's because of the Jennifer Connelly 80s connection. Maybe. But Rocketeer it's such a good movie. And just that, like you said, of those movies, of The Shadow and The Phantom, it did a lot of things right that the other ones didn't do very well. But I gotta give some love to Mystery Men because it's so much fun. It was a satire of, is almost making fun of the superhero genre in the movies as well.
Before the superhero genre really kind of
really got going. So yeah, but I'm like Nicholas. I got to stick with my rankings, and I had Rocketeer above Mystery Men. So I'm sorry, Ben Stiller.
All right, final up here in round 2, we got The Phantom versus Batman and Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero. I'm gonna kick. I'll say Sub-Zero again. I think the story. I think it tells a better story than The Phantom does. The Phantom story is kind of choppy and kind of cliche. And
I gave them both 2.5s. I wrote Mr. Freeze was a really good long episode, but not so much for a movie.
That's very true.
It is I won't deny that.
And I wrote Phantom was desperate for a remake, but overall not bad. So I guess I'm voting Phantom.
Okay.
Just to be.
So Tim, it's all in your hands.
I am gonna go with Batman and Mr. Freeze only because The Phantom was one of the movies that I wanted to rewatch but didn't. And because going off of memory that I did watch it, but have not wanted to rewatch it since then. But I really enjoyed Sub-Zero. It's not very high on my list, but it's one that I would probably watch again, even not being a big fan of the animated movies. So I'm once again right next to each other on my rankings, but I'm going Sub-Zero.
Yeah, The Phantom, I won't disagree. The Phantom probably, if they wanted to remake it, I wouldn't be against remaking it. I think the Phantom should have been bigger than it was. When, towards the end of the movie, when they do the stunt of transferring from the plane to the horse, if there was more of those big epic like stunts in this movie, I'd probably like it a little bit more. Especially those practical stunts like that. Whatever you think of Tom Cruise, the fact that he puts those into the Mission Impossible movies. That's what made Jackie Chan so big. Are these practical stunts? Doing stuff like that, I think, would have pulled it over, but there wasn't enough. So yeah, Sub-Zero is going to take that one. All right, here we go. Next round 3. First up, kind of interesting to see where Tim goes on this one. Time Cop versus Blade.
Listen,
it's Blade. It
gets real easy now. Yeah, I'm going Blade.
Once again, right next to each other on mine, but Blade did edge out over Time Cop.
Yeah.
So
yeah, again, I was going to vote for The Crow over Time Cop anyway, so that one wasn't hard for me. Next up, we got Batman Returns. Ooh, Batman versus Batman. Batman Returns versus Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
I have Batman Returns. Once again, I wasn't as big of a fan of the animated movies, so they're not as high on my rankings. So that's why Batman Returns is going to win out for me. And I would even go with the same thing with that Nicholas said. Both of the animated movies were like not even or just over an hour, so it did feel more like a extended episode more so than an actual movie. So that's another reason why they didn't rank as high on my list.
Yeah, I only gave Mask of the Phantasm 2.5 out of 5. I wrote that I don't know if I was just conflicted over years of hype, but I wasn't really blown away by it.
Yeah, Blake is going to have words with both of y'all next time.
Won't be the first time.
I mean, I know when we did the theme song once, he had some words with me occasionally there too. So, I just, it was good, but it wasn't. So I'm definitely going live action. I'm going Returns.
Okay. I'm not mad at it. And I'm glad y'all both went Returns. It prevents me from having to make the decision. So I'm not mad at it. Returns works for me. I kind of like your argument, Tim, of it's more of a movie than Mask of the Phantasm. So if we are going to go with movie, then sure. All right, here we go. Men in Black versus The Mask. This to me kind of almost feels like it's up to taste in this movie.
I mean, that's just a straight up. I mean, obviously this whole thing is 90 versus 90, but I mean, Men in Black versus The Mask feels even more 90s than.
Yeah.
Okay, what did I?
It's the first time we've had blockbuster versus blockbuster as far as like successful.
Yeah.
Men in Black wins it for me based on rankings. Okay. And I think that's because I rewatched both of these. I've seen both of these movies several times. Men in Black still holds up really well. Like, it's still very much enjoyable to watch. And I can say that about The Mask as well, but I think Men in Black holds up a little bit better than The Mask does.
Well, I was looking at my rankings, and I gave them both 4 out of 5, so I can't really... So I think I'm going to be swayed by Tim's argument. I think he's right. I think that Men in Black does...
Yeah, he
makes a valid argument that it does hold up better than watching Vincent D'Onofrio do his thing, and
yes,
it's
phenomenal. Phenomenal.
As much as I enjoy The Mask, and to be fair to Men in Black, though, I've never read the comic and I know nothing about it, so I have no idea how close it is to being the actual comic, but it doesn't matter because it's one of the things that turned Will Smith into the mega superstar that he is.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, no, Men in Black is I will say Men in Black might actually be a little closer to the comic than The Mask is. If they were to turn the Mask comic into a movie, it would be
very, very different.
Yeah. So, I won't disagree. I think Men in Black probably, as both of you have said, was a more impactful movie than The Mask was. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of The Mask. But I'll agree, Men in Black, I know we're not talking about sequels, but it was more successful with sequels than The Mask was. So, all right. So lastly here, we've got The Rocketeer versus Sub-Zero. That's The Rocketeer. As much as I like Mr. Freeze, I can't put that above The Rocketeer. The Rocketeer, again, it's a better. I'd rather rewatch The Rocketeer than Sub-Zero. I'll leave it at that.
The Rocketeer has a much higher rating on my book, so yeah, I'll agree. I will watch The Rocketeer. I hadn't watched that movie in forever. I do remember really liking it when I was a kid when I watched it, and then I just kind of lost it for a while. I think it's one of those movies that until it showed up on Disney Plus, I kind of forgot it existed.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh wow, and then I watched it. For the first time in a long time, in the last week or two, and I was like, wow, this is really good.
Yeah,
it's definitely one of the forgotten Disney movies that didn't do as well as it should have. It was kind of ahead of its time, I think, even when it came out.
Well, and I think you're right. I think it got swallowed up by Dick Tracy. It got swallowed up by The Shadow and The Phantom, and Disney didn't really know how to market live action as well as they do now.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, this was Disney trying to get into comics before they obviously acquired Marvel. And all right, so we're down to the final 4. Here we go. We got Blade versus Batman Returns.
Man, that's tough.
It is. I'm gonna
go ahead.
I'm just shoot it out. I'm going Blade. As we've said, Batman Returns not as good as Batman. But Blade was the first. Blade, as we've said, was the one that kicked off the resurgence of superhero movies at the end of the 90s. That would eventually, 10 years later, give us the MCU. I think Blade, as you said in previous round, Tim, Blade showed that a superhero movie does not have to be kid family friendly. Not that Batman Returns
they both kind of fall in that category a little bit,
But Batman Returns strived for kid family friendly. Like they pushed as Nicholas brought up, the toys and you didn't have Blade
No.
Happy Meals.
You did have a lot of parents angry about the Batman Returns Happy Meals, though.
Yes, they were. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm going Blade.
I mean, if I'm staying true to how I've been doing it the whole thing, Blade's going on because it's got a 4.5 and Batman only has 4.
Yeah, it's a clean sweep. And it's hard because they're both really good, and I'm such a big fan of Batman 1 and 2, but Blade. But if I want to go like Nicholas, I have Blade as an 8 out of 10, and I have Batman Returns as a 7 out of 10. So Blade definitely wins.
And just I can hear the voice of one of my PCR co-hosts in my head saying, "It's just your Marvel bias over DC." No, it's because I think Blade's a better movie. If we were talking about Batman,
and look, I'm the
Right.
DC guy,
Right,
and I picked
right.
Blade. So.
if we were talking about Batman versus Blade, this is a very different conversation.
Different
but
conversation.
We're talking about
Ooh.
Batman Returns against
Mhm.
Blade. I
Yeah.
think it's a little bit easier for me to choose Blade.
Yeah,
I so want to ask about that one, but I'm not going to.
that would be a whole other discussion.
That's a whole different. All right, our last Final Four matchup: Men in Black versus the Rocketeer. I love the Rocketeer, but Men in Black's got to take this one.
We're close enough there now that Men in Black is my number 1 ranked of my. So
Okay.
Men in Black is definitely going to beat the Rocketeer, but Men in Black was 1, Rocketeer was 4. So I'm glad to see that they made it this far. So
It sounds like your rankings has held pretty close to what we've been doing.
Well, I mean, I've gone this far and sticking with it, and it doesn't matter. I probably would have wanted to vote Men in Black over Rocketeer, but my rankings have me with Rocketeer higher, but whatever.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But,
hey, look,
but,
again, like
Men
I
in
said,
Black, Men in Black won, so,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love the Rocketeer, but if we're again deciding best comic book movie, Men in Black just gonna take it. All right, so here we are, the finals. What is the greatest '90s superhero movie? Is it Blade or is it Men
Now
in
here's the
Black?
difference. You said superhero movie. This wasn't a superhero movie. It's a comedy. There you go.
Comic book movie. Yeah, I tend to well. Let's again talk. Technically, Batman's not a superhero movie. So best '90s comic book movie. Is it Blade or is it Men in Black?
Well, I've already told you what my number 1 is Men in Black. So, and Blade was number 2.
Okay.
So my top 2 made it to the top. I gave Men in Black a 9 out of 10, totally based on rewatchability. I could put in Men in Black at any time and really enjoy it because it's funny. It's, great performances by D'Onofrio, Will Smith at the top of his game. Who doesn't love Tommy Lee Jones just being his wisecrackery, grumpy self? And the special effects were great.
Batman Forever was earlier in the list, right?
But I liked him better in this one. And then Blade, of course, like you said, it changed the way comic book movies were made. It's iconic, but I would have to be in the mood for Blade to watch it again. Even though I would watch it again, and if someone said, "Hey, I want to watch Blade," I would want to watch it with them. But it's a 9 out of 10 versus 8 out of 10. Men in Black wins it for me.
Strong arguments, Nicholas.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with hardly anything that he said, but I have to stay true to my paperwork. And so Blade's got a 4.5, and Men in Black only got a 4. So
yeah, I kind of had a feeling you were going to be Blade, so I was like, okay, it's going to come down to me. So, yeah, I like your arguments, Tim. I'm not going to disagree. My only caveat is when you think comic book movie, do you think Men in Black?
And but even when I saw both of these movies, neither one of them I thought of as a comic book movie.
Yeah, because I said, I did. I knew who Blade was. I will admit, like I think like Nicholas said, I didn't know Men in Black was a comic originally. That was after the fact. But when Blade came out, I knew Blade was. I knew him from the Spider-Man comics. I knew Blade was a comic book movie. I'm gonna have to say Blade edges it out for me, and not just for the arguments I was just giving, but also thinking about Men in Black. And y'all could probably argue with me. And if you want to argue, that's fine. Maybe you can persuade me. Men in Black was made to be a Hollywood summer blockbuster.
True.
Blade was made to start a franchise. Blade was made to continue a genre that was struggling. Blade was, as I think Nicholas said earlier, if Men in Black failed, comic book movies, I think, still would have succeeded. If Blade failed, they wouldn't. And that's why I think Blade is the better comic book movie. Because it truly represents the comic book genre more so than Men in Black does. Men in Black, successful or not, wouldn't have affected the comic book genre. Blade had to be successful to affect the comic book genre. And I think that's why it edges it out.
Yeah, I don't have a strong counter argument to that because I understand where you're coming from.
Because that is where I'm gonna take it as to its impact on comic book movies.
And once again,
not necessarily from a what is a better movie, quote unquote.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say that even Men in Black, I think they were thinking franchise when they did that as well. But you're right, it was meant to be a summer blockbuster. That was its purpose. It was, let's cash in on the popularity of Will Smith. He fought aliens in Independence Day. Let's have him, fight aliens again in Men in Black. And it works. And, Barry Sonnenfeld as the director did a great job. It works. But once again, I have these both in my top two. I'm not really mad if either one beats out the other one because I like them equally. For my personal taste, Men in Black edges it out just a little bit more. But yeah.
I'm not gonna argue with you.
But going back to the original, personal preference, Men in Black wins. If you're really talking about comic book movie, to go back to your original question, if you ask me now, best comic book movies, I would definitely put Blade above Men in Black because I do think of it more as a comic book movie than I would Men in Black.
I mean, that's pretty much the exact argument I would have made had I had been trying to talk one of you into voting for it. So, I mean...
Yeah, and that's, like I said, that was since I had to make a decision. That was what I decided.
And I'm glad that it pained you to make that decision.
It did.
I feel like when we did that episode, a while back, that's the exact argument that I made then, too.
All right, well, let it be known, we have decided that the movie that best represents comic book movies from the 90s, the best 90s comic book movie, is Blade. So there we have it. Now, last time we followed it up by doing an episode. Nick and I have already done Blade. So let me ask the two of you, would you want to do Men in Black?
Sure.
Yeah, I would love to do that one. Yeah.
And so we can have the follow-up.
The runner-up.
Yeah, so we'll come back. It may not be next week. That will all depend on one schedule of everybody, as well as the fact that I've got to read some Men in Black comics. But we'll come back and we will do Men in Black as a review episode to kind of represent, again, not the winner of this, but since we had already done Blade, the next best one. And it really was, because, you again could probably ask me again another day and you could talk me into Men in Black. But right now I'm sticking with Blade, and since it was my decision, that is what we're going with. So there you go. Any last words, Tim or Nicholas?
No, it's been this was a great episode. Thanks for giving us so many movies to watch and giving us at least a couple months to watch them. But it was fun to go back and watch a lot of these that I hadn't seen in a long time and really discover some new ones. So fun times. Looking forward to the next one.
I mean, there's a few movies that I came across here that I'm looking forward to doing an episode with because I'm a glutton for punishment when it comes to bad movies. But finally watched a bunch of movies that have been on my list for a long time.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to that going full circle back to how we started the episode. This was fun. I think when we did the 80s one, and I know Tim did the 80s one with me, Nicholas, you weren't part of that one. But going back to the 80s one, that felt more like a chore for a lot of those. Whereas, and I'm not saying these were all great.
No.
But it was fun.
Yeah.
And that's what I think was so much better about the 90s. And hey, again, we still got another decade we can knock out. Another couple of decades, actually. So Maybe we'll come back with the 2000s. That's when things really get interesting.
Very
You
interesting.
got the MCU starting towards the end, and
Mhm.
you got Marvel again trying to ride off the success of Blade,
Mhm.
the one we picked here. So it'll be interesting to see if we can come back and do the 2000s for the comic movie. But that'll be down the road. We'll go ahead and move on for today. Thanks to everybody for listening. Rate and review the show. Follow these other guys' shows. Always great listens. Especially if you just enjoy listening to a bunch of nerds talk. That's what everybody who does a podcast is doing.
Exactly.
So, all right. But thanks everybody for today. For Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and listen to an 80s Flick Flashback podcast once in a while, you could miss it. Do you love movies of a certain age? Do you miss the days of VHS tapes, VCRs, and the video rental stores? Does the thought of another 80s movie being remade seem inconceivable? My name is Tim Williams. I'm the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. On each episode, I'm joined by guest co-hosts to discuss one of the many movies released in the 1980s. We share our first-time watch memories, our favorite scenes, and even learn some behind-the-scenes stories about the cast and crew along the way. New episodes are released every other Friday on your favorite podcasting platform. So make like a tree, get out of here, and go listen to an excellent episode of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. The ad is over. Go home. Go.